If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror, we'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello, my name is Kevin Tudor, and I'm one of the three hosts of Almost Major, a film podcast dissecting many major indie studios and the films they release. Every week, myself, Charlie Nash, and Bryden Doyle discuss overlooked, forgotten, or bona fide classic indie films via studio-specific miniseries. We've previously covered numerous films from Artisan Entertainment, Lionsgate Films, and New Line Cinema. Titles including The Blair Witch Project, American Psycho, Dogville, But I'm a Cheerleader, Saw, Requiem for a Dream, and Ringmaster, you know, the Jerry Springer film. Anyways, we have a fun time every week and we hope you will join us. Subscribe to Almost Major wherever you get your podcasts. Now proudly a part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Good evening, and welcome to Night Gallery.
Thank you, Rod. And I want to welcome everyone to Midnight Viewing, where once a month we talk all about your follow-up to The Twilight Zone, Rod Serling's Night Gallery.
They say it's Rod Serling's Night Gallery, and it isn't really Rod Serling's Night Gallery, it's somebody else's.
Oh, we know. We talk about it a lot. Your curators at Midnight Viewing are the Projection Booth's Mike White.
What can happen to human beings when trust is wiped out by suspicion?
And CultureCast's Chris Stashew.
Small boy encased in a crystal ball.
And I'm Father Malone.
The kind of thing that usually infests nightmares.
Join us monthly at Midnight Viewing, the Night Gallery podcast at weirdingwaymedia.com.
Doesn't remotely belong to me. I have no proprietary interest in that at all.
Weirding Way Media.
Hello there, I'm Chris Stashew.
I'm Mike White.
And this is Father Malone.
And we are the hosts of Dreams for Sale, a monthly look at Twilight Zone 1985. Now, if you didn't get a chance to catch the last episode, our first episode, we talked about Shatterday and A Little Peace and Quiet. That was the first episode of the first season of the show, the pilot, as it were, but we are going to move right into the second episode of the show. If you've never seen Twilight Zone 1985, it is a Twilight Zone reboot that took place from 1985 to 1989. Let's get right into Season 1, Episode 2. This episode is split into three parts. We have Wordplay, Dreams for Sale, which the podcast is named after, and we have an interview with the director, Tommy Lee Wallace, after we talk about that one, and also Chameleon. So let's start with Wordplay.
A question trembles in the silence. Why did this remarkable thing happen to this perfectly ordinary man?
Wednesday. Wednesday.
It may not matter why the world shifted so drastically for him. Existence is slippery at the best of times. What does matter is that Bill Lowry isn't ordinary. He's one of us, a man determined to prevail in the world that was, in the world that is, or the world that will be, in the Twilight Zone.
All right, so the episode aired October 4th, 1985. It's directed by Wes Craven and written by Rockne O'Bannon. It stars Robert Klein, Annie Potts, and Robert Downey Sr. The episode follows Robert Klein as an overworked businessman who thinks that everyone is speaking gibberish. So I'll kick it to you guys first. What did you guys think revisiting Wordplay?
Simply one of the best episodes of the series. I mean, one that has never diminished in any way. Mike, what were you going to say?
Well, Wordplay is one of those episodes that actually stuck with me for all these years. And it is something that I come back to and think about often because it's a simple concept, but it is so scary. I mean, because it basically mirrors real life in the way that you get out of touch with the world, and the way that it starts with him trying to learn this new jargon because he's a salesman. And as he's, talking about trying to learn these new terms, the old terms are slipping away and having words being replaced on him. And the way that the episode builds and builds, and the way that the words are disappearing and his confusion, I mean, I really feel that. Like, there are times, and I don't know if you guys feel this, I would hope that you do, but there are times where you're like, am I the only sane person and the world is going insane? And that is totally what Bill Lowry, the Robert Klein character, is experiencing so much through this.
Yeah, I concur 100%. It is just a masterful. There's so much to take away from this particular concept. As you said, just on a basic level of like being a person in a workforce who is being overtaken by a younger generation. There's that. There's feeling dissociated culturally and socially. It struck a chord when I was young, seeing the episode, just on a terrifying level of no longer being able to communicate with others. But the older I get, the scarier this becomes because, as you said, Mike, you can feel this way more often than not these days, or at least as one gets older.
Yeah, I'm a real stan for this episode. It's completely on fleek.
God. Oh, I was expecting you to say that. I heard you say that in my mind before you said it. But I mean, the real question I have for you guys is, do you know anywhere I can go to get some good dinosaur? When I first saw the episode, because this was the first time I watched it, I didn't catch immediately that they were saying gibberish words until the third or fourth time they said encyclopedia. And then they were talking about teaching old dogs new trumpets. And I was like, okay, I get, because it's not like some other Twilight Zone episodes where there's a very clear spot where the episode begins and kind of shifts. It just kind of starts, which I think is really great about this episode, that it just kind of kicks off immediately. And you've got this immediate conflict of Bill Lowry just not being able to understand anything that anyone is saying.
It actually harkens back to what we liked about the Saturday episode, which is the less time explaining what's happening, the better. It doesn't matter. It's just occurring, and watching him deal with it is the entire thing.
And if you watch this episode, you'll realize that this is occurring over the period of one day. He loses everything over one day. We start with him waking up in the morning after a long night of cramming, trying to learn these new terms. And he comes home for lunch, and already by the time he comes home for lunch, so many words have already been replaced. And we're getting, we've got Robert Downey Sr. in the morning, my encyclopedia just had puppies. And then by the time he's going home for dinosaur, things have already started to change. And then he gets that whole emergency with his son being sick. And by the time they're at the hospital, he is completely out of it and cannot understand anything. And you feel for him. You also feel for Annie Potts, because in her mind, her husband is losing his mind. So it's just amazing the way that we have all of these levels going on in this really simple, what is this, 20 minutes? There's not even a commercial break for this thing.
No, again, it reminds me a lot of Saturday in that it's super tight, super to the point, very focused, very lean. It doesn't have a lot of extraneous nonsense. It focuses on one character, and it does that character justice, and the character has a full arc, which, again, with only 20 minutes, That's a pretty hard thing to do, to give a character a full arc, but Rockne O'Bannon's writing really just knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, one thing I've really admired about it is it would have been easy to just have the characters start speaking actual gibberish, and yet replacing it with other words that we're familiar with somehow made it more frightening in my mind, that these are words that you totally understand, but now in this new context you just have no idea. And along those lines, watching Annie Potts speaking in full sentences with words completely out of context and out of place was masterful. She's amazing in this episode.
Yeah, that's when it gets really super scary for me, is when they're doing the entire sentences, because at first you think it's just going to be like an occasional noun, like the guy Bill Barons who sits behind him, and he's like, we've got what those younger salesmen don't have, mayonnaise. And you're like, okay, you're thinking every single time they get to the end of a sentence there's going to be a punchline, where can I go for a good dinosaur, etc., etc. But then they start to work it in over and over again, and it's just even his name changes. That's one of the craziest things too, is that he doesn't even have his own name by the end of the episode. It has now shifted to something else. And then the thing that always gets me with this episode is we end with him looking at a picture book and looking at a dog, and it says Wednesday underneath it. And then I'm just thinking to myself, my God, like, I could name you 20 breeds of dog right now without even thinking about it. Now, like, I'm trying to learn another language right now. I'm trying to learn Mandarin right now. And when I think about all of the intricacies of the English language, and then how there are intricacies inside of, Mandarin, it's just like, oh my gosh, to think of all of the ways that we use words and twist words. And here he is as this old dog going to have to learn these new tricks. And is it even going to last? Like, is it going to be this language on Wednesday, and it's going to be a different language on Thursday, or what is his life going to be like? And it's such a poignant nightmare for me.
I just couldn't agree more. I think this is one of the most frightening half hours of television ever produced. I believe that this is actually Rockne O'Bannon's first script. This was like a spec script. This is how he got hired on the Twilight Zone. And what an immense and amazing episode to have written, just sort of off the top of his head and submitted, because I think he's an amazing talent. And this episode, like you, Mike, has stuck with me all these years. That line about the those kids will never have what we have, mayonnaise, like that's in my head more often than not. I think it a lot as I get older and look out culturally and just think like I do not understand what these kids are doing these days. So kudos to this episode. It is amazing.
Well, I'm right there with you. I'm younger than both of you, but at the same time, I am feeling that same cultural kind of out of step. I feel like I'm out of step with culture in some respects, especially like you were saying, on fleek, stands, all that nonsense kind of, I guess they're like abbreviations or slang. Some of our abbreviations, some are slang. And I don't have any idea what's going on sometimes. And like you guys said, it's pretty terrifying. It's legitimately terrifying, especially in this day and age where the internet has connected everyone and made stuff like this so prevalent and easy to kind of disseminate.
It used to be like, a phrase would take its time to permeate the culture and the consciousness, and it moves so fast now that we are actually in a way living this particular story these days. So yeah, that's it can be terrifying, and anyway.
It's like, I'm a big fan of words and word meanings and phrases and obscure phrases, and just to know the way that phrases have changed over time. And yeah, to your point, Father Malone, just the way that we move so quickly, and that the way that improper phrases can take hold and just become the phrases themselves. Sometimes you're making fun of them and it takes hold that way, and other times it's just the way that it is. I mean, I think all of us here have probably said the phrase chomping at the bit not realizing that the phrase is actually champing at the bit. But now if somebody says, I'm champing at the bit, you're like, what the fuck is this guy's problem? Why isn't he saying it the right way? And it's like, yeah, we change our language so much. Like someone 50 years ago would have said things differently than we do. And then, yeah, to your point, like we move at the speed of the internet now, so that in a week I'll see, are you a stand for blah, blah, blah? And I'll be like, I don't even know what that means.
Suddenly the word bay came into our consciousness. And I was like, wait, what is this? Like, and everyone was saying it. Yeah. And I happen to work with a lot of, 19 and 20-year-olds. So I'll come into work and suddenly everyone is saying it. So, the speed with which it sort of permeates culture is kind of crazy these days. And so I don't know. I think this episode worked in '85, and it is eerily prescient when you factor in where we are these days, and becomes all the more frightening when you think it could one day you wake up and everything has changed.
I kafefe.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't this version, the recent version of this episode, would it just be calling everyone cucks?
I just posted a sad frog in response to that.
Right? Sad Pepe. Did you do the white power sign with your finger doing the okay sign too?
Yes.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, it is more applicable now than I think it may have even been in 1985 because of the speed at which our culture changes. So, well, let's move on to the next segment in the episode. That segment is Dreams for Sale.
Dreams for Sale.
There it is, folks. It is the second segment in episode 2 of the first season. It was directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, who we have an interview with, and it was written by Joe Gannon. It stars Meg Foster and David Hayward. Meg Foster plays a woman at a picnic who keeps seeing the same events repeating over and over again. And man, this is a good episode. It's kind of a bummer of an episode, but you know what? It's also a very good episode.
Yeah, I like this episode a lot. Like, when you think that this is the second episode of this series, the first episode, I think A Little Peace and Quiet was okay, but Saturday was such an opening salvo, and then followed up with these two stories, which are kind of oddly like bookends about perception and reality versus fantasy. This one is fantastic. Meg Foster is way too unappreciated as an actress. I thought she was always great. And she really sells it. And, from her perspective, watching this episode back in the day, I mean, at the time, virtual reality wasn't really anything more than a concept. I think this episode could play nowadays, and people would probably catch on really quickly, I think, seeing it for the first time. I mean, Chris, you saw it for the first time. Did you get it right away?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty obvious that she was in some form of like simulation or alternate reality or something that was constraining her in a way that she wasn't fully aware of.
I think the Plex lagging.
For 5 minutes, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I don't know. I do love this episode, this particular story. Obviously, we named our podcast after it. Yeah, she's fantastic. I don't know. I really loved, particularly on the heels of Wordplay, this episode with a female protagonist and the sort of fight between dream and reality, and then the actual reality being so much worse than even what she's experiencing, I think, inside. I don't know. This one also stuck with me, 33 years later.
And what a tight episode. I mean, this is, 8 minutes long, I think it is? It's basically 2 sets. You've got just a handful of actors, and we are going from the picnic scene to the dystopian future scene, and that dystopian future is just basically a hallway. I mean, there's really nothing to it, but it's so effective in that it is so pared down that we don't need to see the outside world. We don't need to see the smokestacks billowing, black smoke into the air or anything. We just know that things are bad, that people have to turn to these machines for their recreation, and that something as simple as a picnic, probably something as simple as the outdoors, is such a treat for them that they would spend their lunch hour or whatever, their hard-earned credits on this kind of thing. I mean, it's just, you it gives you enough that you can just start to fill in all those blanks the way that you want to and experience this the way that you want to, and just it's a real nice jab to the gut because it doesn't overstay its welcome.
I was under the impression that they were on a spaceship.
Really? Okay, see? There you go.
Yeah. See, that's what
there you go.
I thought they were on a spaceship, and this was like alternate reality on a spaceship, and they were trying to like relive times on Earth. So, I mean, same difference essentially, right?
Exactly. And there's no right answer, which is the nice thing too.
Yeah. It's a crazy episode.
Always best.
The way the episode ends is so bizarre on top of everything else that it kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, I know that's an 8-minute episode, but when the episode ended, I was like, shit, that is a bummer of an episode. But in like the best way possible, because there's only one way that it theoretically could have ended. And I think that's what's so much fun about this episode is that you take this 8-minute journey, you feel like you've taken a complete journey with this character, and the ending is both completely logical, but at the same time dour and not exactly uplifting.
But at the same time, kind of uplifting because wouldn't you rather die in that the fantasy world than continue to be a drone in some dystopian nightmare?
It would depend on whether or not the dream that I'm having actually works or if it keeps buffering every 2 seconds.
Okay, that's true. It seemed to work itself out there at the end.
Yeah, I was getting some smooth playback.
Maybe she had to die. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe you have to die for it to actually work.
I think she had a schizoid embolism.
Oh, dear God. You'll wake up and you won't die. Where was Roy Brocksmith? That's the question. Isn't that the question we all should be asking? Is why wasn't Roy Brocksmith?
He should have been there.
I think he was too busy working with Bill Hickey and giving him a new body.
Oh, my God, no. Giving him Rick Rossovich's body.
That's a lot of work, you know.
Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus Christ. But no, I mean, this episode, this segment of the episode is really good. And again, it's a masterclass in how to tell a story in a very limited amount of time.
And I got to say, one thing I really admire is, and this is true of maybe the first 2 seasons of the revival, where instead of padding the other stories, the 2 stories, the main stories, if you will, they allow time to tell a quick one like this with total economy. It allows the other ones to not sort of belabor their plot by padding them out in any way. So you could in one way view this as sort of like a filler thing in between the 2. But if this is what filler is, then like we need more of it.
Well, let's play the interview we did with Tommy Lee Wallace, who directed Dreams for Sale. And when we get back, we'll finish up by talking about Chameleon. The first segment that you directed was for the second episode of the show. That segment is Dreams for Sale, which our podcast is actually named after. So there's that. Mm-hmm. So how did you get involved with the show initially?
The usual way. It was very conventional Hollywood style. My agent heard something, made some contact, and I think I just went in, or it may have been done over the phone because I had a little bit of a track record at that point. But I met Phil DeGuerre and a couple of the other people involved, and it happened very quickly. They were going 90 miles an hour, and just gave me the nod, and away I went.
Initially, when you were brought on, kind of what restrictions were placed on you working in the television medium and on Twilight Zone specifically?
Very little in the way of restriction. Phil DeGuerre was a good producer to work with, and the crew was very fast. And so if you knew what you wanted, and I came out of USC Film School, and most of us who came out of there oriented toward directing knew better than to go in like artiste. We went in like a craftsman with a shot list and knew what the hell we wanted, so there was never any standing around on set. It was just like, okay, great, we've got that. Let's move on to this shot right here. That's what any television show needs, and Twilight Zone wanted to be very, very different and innovative. So you were certainly encouraged to lead with your own personal touches. There wasn't a sort of corporate imprimatur placed on anyone that I know of. Just energetic, good, original, fun, interesting choices of blocking and angles. That certainly was encouraged. And that, it was pretty good atmosphere in which to work.
When you were directing it, was anything that kind of stand out for you when you were working on it? Any kind of stories or memories regarding working on that episode?
Well, look, I'll be really honest. I loved working with the actors that we found for those parts. And it was happening, as I said, blindingly fast. Quite a few of my concerns were internal, that I don't want to air my dirty laundry out in public. The director of photography was a troublesome person. He was a troubled person. And he made my job a little harder than it needed to be. I was very focused on that and trying to mitigate the fallout from that while turning in a good movie. So I guess I succeeded, because I don't think any of that conflict shows up there on the screen, which is all that really counts in the end.
No, yeah, I think that, Dreams for Sale is one of those segments that really sticks out for me, because, again, it feels very much ahead of its time, if that makes sense. It's a lot, it's kind of, it does something interesting with a simple concept, and I think that the way that it's shot really helps, and kind of your direction obviously is kind of helpful in kind of giving you not a really great sense of what's going on initially, and then kind of when the curtain is pulled back, you're like, oh wow, this is where this is going.
That was a characteristic of some of my favorite Twilight episodes from the Rod Serling series, where are we going? What's going? The big reveal, the O. Henry irony of a situation, or anything that pulled the curtain suddenly appealed to me, because I really felt that harkened back to the original, and certainly that was what attracted me to this concept. There you are, you don't know where you are, and this idea of kind of cyber reality, of sitting in a chair with some sort of headset or something, that takes you somewhere else. That was still pretty fresh and pretty cutting edge. You weren't just seeing it every day. Obviously, by now, after Matrix and dozens of others, that's fairly commonplace. But then that was still a revelation.
And let me ask you, since you brought up the original show, did you have a kind of a favorite episode, or did the original show kind of mold you coming into your own as a director?
Well, let me see. Some of this stuff's going to get cross-wired and scrambled in my head. Wasn't To Serve Man was a Twilight episode, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, I'd have to say that was right up there. And then there was one, the sort of bad seed kid who everybody was scared of because he had some kind of superpower that could make you dissolve in agony. It was the kid that was starred in Lost in Space.
Right.
And that was a pretty chilling episode. That gave, I wouldn't be surprised if, Stephen King might have been watching that when he thought of Firestarter, or there's plenty of Carrie, any of those concepts. I think Rod Serling may have originated, planted the seed, so to speak, for certain ideas like that. Those two really chilled me out.
Yeah, the one that you're talking about is It's a Good Life with Bill Mumy. That's classic. That's an absolute classic.
And everybody, it's the same technique. Everybody's scared of this kid, and you don't know why for a while, and then it's finally it's revealed. Oh no! That was part of the charm of the show, was that ability to take you in. What was the guy on the train? He keeps stopping. There's this magical stop that's not on the schedule, and he keeps getting off the train to explore this sort of dream place. And I guess
stop at Willoughby.
There we go. And that was pretty. The concept of that one, where I think the punchline of that one was that this guy tragically steps off of a moving train at some point, thinking that he's getting off at Willoughby. I believe that's how that story resolved. But that was wonderful. That was just, I think Twilight Zone in general under Rod Serling, who was blessed, of course, with this fabulous voice and this great deadpan delivery that set such a edgy and scary tone. Really, it made you uneasy about what you were about to see.
Right.
Just the whole show and the way he handled it, and this man was a gifted writer. I mean, if you read The Odyssey of Flight 33, I believe that was the name of it, when the airplane can't land because it keeps coming back down to try to land, and it's like, oh shit, the land of the dinosaurs, or, the future or something.
Right.
The man was really gifted with just twisted little ideas, and they were, almost all of them were vignettes, just perfect for a short verse,
Yeah.
And I think that spirit very much, I think Phil DeGuerre was excited about that spirit and that way of doing things. And I think he tried to carry that torch into the 80s show.
So you directed Dreams for Sale, and then you would come back for the segment Little Boy Lost.
As it went chronologically, as I recall, I shot Little Boy Lost first and Dreams for Sale later. But, then they scrambled it around however they wanted to do it.
So kind of what was it like working on Little Boy Lost versus Dreams for Sale? I mean, obviously, again, was it...
Really different. Mm-hmm. Really different show. Little Boy Lost, of course, with Season, was a sweet, almost sentimental tale of longing and involved mostly emotions. And it was poignant and kind of heartrending in its way. That's really the polar opposite of what we were doing with Dreams for Sale. Was just, and that was one thing I loved about the show. It seemed not to be in one bag. It was ready to go many different directions.
Well, and I think that's what works about a show like you mentioned, like the Twilight Zone, where they can kind of span the gamut, and it's not just horror or sci-fi. It can kind of be a kind of a downplayed version of one of those, or even fantasy, and it works in a way that makes the show feel fresh, and it doesn't allow it to kind of spin its wheels.
I don't know. I think anthology and the popularity of anthology shows seems to go in cycles because, just as it happens in pop music, for example, where at some points during its history, pop music has been so eclectic, anything goes. The popularity of a certain era that I can recall where you could hear anything on the radio back to back. You could hear Jimi Hendrix next to Frank Sinatra. And that was, the public just said, yeah, let's do that. And then there came an era when it was all felt like it was squeezed into one little box, and rock and roll kind of fragmented, and you couldn't hear that stuff. You had this station, you were going to hear this one kind of music. I think the public taste fluctuates from those 2 points of view, from give me variety, give me everything, to, oh no, I only want this one little thing. I want, what are those cop shows called? The analytical shows with all about DNA. All of a sudden, everything on TV is that fucking genre. And then, all of a sudden the public's ready for more variety. So I think that goes, we were in the right pocket for a show that had tremendous variety about it and was able to bounce from one thing to another, and the viewers were ready to go with us.
Well, and like you said, I mean, it is cyclical. Now you have Jordan Peele, who directed Get Out. He's coming back to do Twilight Zone now in 2018, 2019. You have shows, I mean, they're anthology series, but I mean, Black Mirror, you have American Horror Story, which is an anthology series in a kind of a different vein. So it's interesting, like you said, that it seems to kind of be cyclical. And
yeah, and thank God it changes, especially right now when we're finally getting racial and gender diversity into the picture, and it's not all coming from white male point of view. That affects the picture as well in a really healthy way, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. And especially, I mean, you have an African-American man helming the next version of the Twilight Zone. So,
well, just by nature, that's going to be a different point of view, much needed. I mean, really, we need to air out this. Hollywood, to a huge degree, still is run by adolescent males, overage adolescent white males. And it's great to see that that structure kind of crumbling a little bit because, are we not all sick of 450 comic book spectacular extravaganza B movies as big budget spectacular? Don't we want some other stuff?
I mean, I would be inclined to agree with you. It has become, and it's moving in the right direction. Obviously, I mean we've seen that, but it's slow moving, but slow nonetheless.
Well, power is not going to let go of itself. It's not going to cede, just like in politics. People in power want that as quo. People who are making money hand over fist and getting, $250,000 a year just to sit in an office and pass judgment on these poor pitch people who come in like myself once upon a time, they're not going to let go of their offices just because it would be nice if we were more diverse. That ain't going to happen. So it just has to happen by force and by talent, such as Peel, Yeah.
I completely agree. So, moving on to the final segment you worked on for the show, and obviously this segment, The Leprechaun Artist, not only did you direct it, you also wrote it.
I think the blurb that I was basing it on might have been Phil's. Just the one-sentence pitch might have come from Phil. I didn't dream the notion up myself. I worked off of somebody's pitch within the organization who said, we need a story about this, and I took it and ran, and they liked it. It was originally called Three Irish Wishes, which, of course, blessedly was changed to something that the pun didn't really work, Leprechaun Artist. But still, it was what it was, and I really enjoyed getting to work with kids. I guess I've always enjoyed working with kids. It certainly came to fruition for me on It several years later, when I was working with a whole pile of kids and adults. But kid stories and seeing things from kids' points of view and rites of passage of childhood, all that stuff is, I just love that stuff. Well, that was a strange episode too, wasn't it? It was a fable in a way. It didn't go with the same kind of, punchline, payoff, surprise, horror. That stuff didn't seem to really be part of it. It was more innocent than that in a way.
Well, it was a fantasy. It's got fantasy elements. I mean, there are episodes of the show. Another one that I can think of is The Shadow Man. I mean, that's what Leprechaun Artist kind of reminded me of in a way. There's a little bit of darkness, but the darkness is kind of when you're a child, the innocence that you have darkness, and you're kind of seeing these things in a way that, you can interpret them one way or another. And that's, that's what I liked about The Leprechaun Artist, is because it's fantasy, but it feels real, and it feels, it's got that element of it where it's like, to be a kid again, but be careful of the thing that, you don't really understand as a kid.
Buddy, Richie, and I believe it was DJ. It was the three names of the three guys that died in the plane crash: Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and what was the Big Bopper's real name? DJ something or CJ. I can't quite remember, but
it was JP.
JP. Okay, thank you. That's the three guys that died in the plane crash. Not that it mattered. It had no symbolic meaning other than. I didn't, when I write a script, I want the names to have some significance, even if it's hidden. Charles Dickens, of course, wrote novel after novel, and the names are so memorable because, in general, they were onomatopoetic. They sounded like what the character was. Pip. Oh, well, optimistic and cheerful. And Stephen King took that up. If you go back and look at it, those characters are Charles Dickens' names completely. Denborough, Bill Denborough, burrowing in the den. Beverly Marsh, she was the source of all of it, all goodness and fecundity, just it goes on and on. And so I didn't do that precise thing with these characters in Leprechaun Artist, but I wanted their names to have some kind of meaning, even if it was hidden.
How do you feel kind of the show has aged since it came out?
I think that if one goes back and look, it holds up very well. I'm not sure, Chris, just how big a hit it was. I was, when I finished my part in it. I was pleased and happy and proud that it got on the air and so forth. But I didn't pay a lot of attention to how big it was or how long it lasted or how the ratings went or whether it was perceived in the community as a success. Perhaps it wasn't that big a hit. I really don't know for sure. But I agree with you that it tends to get passed over in sort of conversation about anthology shows on television.
Yeah, it does, and I mean that's kind of what drove us to do this show. I honestly, my co-hosts are a couple years older than me. By a couple, I'm in my late 20s, and they're in their mid 40s. So they told me about the show, and I had never seen it. I had never even heard of it, which is astounding considering how horror is my favorite genre. So I'm kind of shocked I'd never come upon it beforehand.
It's interesting because there was a lot of heat around it. I mean, it was doing some cool things. It brought William Friedkin in for an episode to direct. Bruce Willis starred in one of the episodes. He was just taking off. It was prescient in many ways, and there's a lot of smart people around that show.
You know, it's one of those shows that, again, I was surprised I'd never seen it because I am a fan of Halloween 3. I am a fan of the original It. I'm a huge fan of Wes Craven, yourself, a lot of the, Harlan Ellison, Rock Neo-Band, and I'm a huge fan of all of them, so I was kind of surprised I'd never seen it before. So, it's one of those shows that we're trying to reintroduce.
Packed with talent. Well, they had Rockney and Bruno, last name, you'll see it in the credits list somewhere. He was, I think, in charge of special visual effects. Bruno something. Forgive me, Bruno, for forgetting your last name. But some real talent, really notable people who I think went on from there and did other great things as well.
So, of the 3 that you worked on, which of the episodes was your personal favorite to work on?
Well, I've got a sentimental attachment to the kids show, The Leprechaun Artist, but I think my favorite, just objectively from the point of view of the spirit of the Twilight Zone spirit, if you will, would have to be Dreams for Sale.
Yeah, I think that one, again, that episode feels like it was transplanted from the original show, in a way.
Yeah. I think that probably what I'm really trying to say is it felt the most like an original Twilight Zone episode in form and spirit and execution.
I don't know. Like you said, it feels so ahead of its time in a way, and I think that's what we really liked about it.
I also suspect, if you look at the running times, that it was the briefest of the 3 that I did, shortest. And there's great virtue in brevity. The longer you go on, sometimes the less you have to say. And I thought it got its thing said pretty efficiently.
Oh no, I agree. I was gonna say, the fact that you can tell a contained story in about 8 minutes, start to finish, very lean, not a whole lot of fat on it, 0 fat in its case, because it has to be quick. I think that's probably one of the more impressive parts.
Now, speaking of impressive, I think probably what ultimately may have made the show almost unsustainable was the fact that Phil was allowing each episode to be its natural length, more or less, and that meant he couldn't formalize the thing, and that means pieces of a puzzle, really intricate editing challenges when you've got different lengths. You can't predict the exact running time of each show way ahead of time. I believe that proved to be just a bigger and bigger problem as they went on. So it was really difficult.
Yeah, we have heard that kind of was one of the later problems with show on channel.
Yeah, and I think it's just a naive mistake because Phil was erring on the side of artistry and creativity when in fact that particular decision that made life so much more difficult, had he said arbitrarily, okay, look, we're going to do 3 short episodes per show, each one is going to be this long. Well, now, if you're creating the thing from scratch, you can work to that. So he could have made his creative people, including the writers and directors, he could have given that assignment, and it wouldn't have killed anybody's show. Had I been told I needed to make a show that was twice as long, I would have probably, it might not have been as elegant, short, but I could have come up with some sort of B story or subplot or flight of fantasy or something that wouldn't have ruined the show, but in the end it would have helped him in a more cookie cutter kind of way.
Right. No, I agree. You know, there, like you said, there's something to be said for brevity and being able to kind of keep something succinct and to the point and really kind of just laser-like focus, especially with a segment like Dreams for Sale, where it's straight to the point and it works so well, being so straight to the point that doesn't feel like it's spinning its wheels.
You know, in the end, all of this is working up to an argument for non-commercial television, because when your product is driven so thoroughly by the deodorant and shoes and cars that you're selling rather than the content itself, it can be kind of oppressive. Whereas, like, you know, I watch a lot of PBS, and the British shows that come in are irregular lengths. They're not always, you know, made for the precise little 1-hour slot thing. It's refreshing. They do quality stuff because they aren't restricted in the same way, because so much of their product is aimed for the BBC, which is not a commercial network.
Well, and it's similar to like streaming services where they can just kind of do whatever. I mean, Netflix, maybe not Hulu so much, but Netflix or HBO or Showtime or Starz, they can kind of do what they want without the shackles of commercials.
Absolutely. And I think that's really where it's at, and probably where the future is, because let's be honest, I find in this day and time with, I think, 43 minutes of programming per hour and the rest is commercials, I find virtually all of it unwatchable because of all the commercial interruptions.
Yeah, they begin to wear.
Yeah, it's just unwatchable, which is why people strategize with TiVo and other devices that can skip the crappy commercial. So I think it's a terribly flawed model. I was sat down one day because I was, I don't know which of the major networks I was working for at the time, but I was in an executive's office and I was arguing passionately about something involving the show itself and its content and the way it was coming off. And it was an artistic issue of some sort. And he listened for a little while and he put up his hand and stopped me and says, wait a minute, you need to understand something. What you're creating is filler between the commercials. Do you understand? And I was like, it just made my blood run cold. It was like, okay, I see the future of the major networks, I think, is a brick wall. Eventually, with that kind of attitude.
The emphasis is put on the wrong syllable, is the way I look at it.
Yeah, good way to put it. They just don't, anybody who spouts that kind of nonsense just doesn't get it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the, you know, it's, I've spoken to a fair amount of people in the industry, and everyone always tells me it's not show, it's show business. And when the business aspect of show business takes over, the creative part becomes stifling and restrictive.
Well, it can be really cynical that way. The expression in my day was, it's not show art, it's show business. And it's like, yeah, okay, you tell me that and I'll just go somewhere else. And that's kind of what has happened in the last couple of decades, is there's been a real talent drain out of Hollywood because good writers especially can't get their material sold because studios and big production companies won't take a risk on an original piece of material. They would rather do a sequel or a prequel or a remake because they at least perceive that as being a better bet. The odds are better for it. And as a result, they've just squeezed the talent right out of town. It's like, who cares? I'll go teach in South Carolina instead. And it's choking the business.
Yeah, who wants to work on something that they don't have, I don't know, full creative control or full creative input over when it comes to, like, writing the script? It has to do this, and this because of prior things that have already happened or because of another film.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's just soul crushing, and which is why I think the indies and most certainly television, non-commercial television, cable television, is just thriving. It's golden age. The off-brand TV is great for the last 10 years. The independent film world where you can make a movie out of the trunk of your car with your cell phone. That's all great stuff. It's great taking the power away from these guys who think they know what they're doing, and they're just mostly full of shit.
Imagine yourself a visitor to many worlds, drifting on the solar wind, 1,000 voices singing in your memory. Now imagine you're this man, who can only guess at the wonders he might have known, wonders that exist for him now only as a riddle from the Twilight Zone.
All right, Chameleon is the final segment of episode 2. It is directed by Wes Craven and written by James Crocker. It stars Terry O'Quinn and John Ashton, and it follows Terry O'Quinn and John Ashton as NASA technicians who encounter a strange form of life that is probably alien. So I'm just going to go on a limb here and say that this is my favorite episode segment so far in the show. It is personal in a way that you wouldn't expect it to be. Again, really well written, very tight, interesting characters, but also, again, kind of a bummer of an ending, but in a positive way as well.
Yeah, they do seem to balance that very well, this particular series, where even a downer of an ending has a bit of uplift to it. And this is a perfect example of it. And talk about a tension-filled episode. Right up to that, the last thing. Like, it's very cleverly written. I do have a quibble with it. I don't know who in their right mind would have gone into the John Ashton chamber. Even if he had passed out like that, I think they might have contrived a better reason to get that guy in there, to have him morph into that guy as well. But a minor quibble. And always good to see Lynn Shay in an episode. Wes Craven used her a lot. She was even in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Obviously, she was Robert Shay's sister, who ran New Line Cinema, which is where Wes Craven really sort of came to be.
I was super happy to see Ben Piazza in this. One of my favorite actors from the Blues Brothers. They smell bad.
Yeah.
I was happy to see Terry O'Quinn in this episode because call the president and tell him the dream is over.
The whole thing of him, like, I want to know, I have to know. And I'm just like, oh, this is the early days of John Locke. Okay. This is before he started working at the cardboard box factory that Hurley owned.
Right.
All right. I got it.
Terrence O'Quinn, I noticed in this episode.
Oh, yes. Very proper.
They didn't even call him Terry.
And then John Ashton is a favorite. I talked to him when we did an episode on Beverly Hills Cop. Super nice guy, and it was great seeing him in this. And I was afraid that he was just going to be some schlub when he showed up, and he'd be like, oh, yeah, he played a janitor or whatever. And then it ends up that he has a pretty big role in a 25-minute, piece of material. With this one actually did have a commercial break right in the middle of it, seemed like. But, yeah, he plays a great role in this. And, I mean, everybody is terrific in this. And, again, such a tight script, just that it does what you said. It ratchets up the tension over this short amount of time, because at first it could have ended up like something horrible, like the astronaut's wife or something like that. That's what I was afraid of, or life or something like that, where it's just like, oh, there's something that showed up on a spaceship and it made its way back to Earth. Okay, great. But it ends up actually being very compelling.
I was expecting it to be like that X-Files episode with the face from Mars.
Ooh.
That episode is a fucking nightmare. That episode is really bad. And that's what I was expecting when I first read the synopsis for the episode. But it's, like you said, it's completely not at all what I was expecting. Which, again, really, really good.
And the guy who wrote this, James Crocker, I mean, he ended up becoming a supervising producer on this, as well as Deep Space Nine, and he was on one of my favorite shows that I don't know if it ever came out on DVD. Imagine I have to go to like iOffer or something and find it, which was Whiz Kids. Did you guys ever see Whiz Kids? It was probably on before you were born, Chris.
I remember Whiz Kids with, oh my God, I can't remember the main kid's name, but I know who you're talking about. Was that Matthew Laborteaux or something?
Yes, very good. Good one.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I know, you fetus.
It's pronounced fetus, get it right?
Okay.
It was very much inspired by War Games, if not. I mean, I think it was right around the time that War Games came out, and it was, it was like the Bloodhound Gang, but with computers, and then you had Max Scale as their mentor kind of character.
That's right.
Like, I don't understand what you guys are saying when you're talking all these weird computer terms, but okay, cool, I'll help out.
I do remember it. My goodness. And when we say Bloodhound Gang, we don't mean the rap rock combination from Philadelphia. But we're talking about the PBS show.
I know what it is, Father Malone. This was.
No, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Chris.
No.
He was clarifying for me because I only know the Bloodhound Gang from that one song where they do it like they do on the Discovery Channel.
There you go.
Now.
But no, I'm saying I get it. This is the early days of Scorpion, that CBS show that's on now, and Max Gale is basically the T-1000 role, the Robert Patrick role. So this is totally Scorpion. 1983.
Yeah.
Which I don't understand why you end the tag Scorpion if it's is it a self-closing tag? It's kind of weird. I don't know that tag at all.
Again, no idea what you're talking about.
All right. Well, let me just say one more thing about Chameleon.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I went on a WizKids jaunt there.
I know. Well, we all have our obsessions. I love the way this one is shot. Wes Craven, I think. He's got a very definitive style where he tends to light everything from the top, which he's kind of doing here. But for the first time, I noticed that control room everyone is in is just filled with smoke, which is sort of an atmospheric thing that I think Spielberg was really trafficking in from the late 70s on. And it gives this, for some reason, I couldn't explain why, but it makes everything seem hotter and somehow more tense in that room. I think it is a beautiful looking episode in addition to everything else. Questionable using how much of the NASA footage at the beginning. It just feels like an Ed Wood film at that point. But once they get back on Earth, I think it looks great.
I completely concur with that. Yeah, when they started off with that footage, and it's like, oh, I'm going to do a spacewalk. I was like, oh my God, this is bad.
Look at me, I'm turning around.
Whoa. Yeah, it felt like I was waiting for George Clooney to come floating by.
I think my favorite part of this episode is the ending. And it ends on a note that is so interesting, and also, I don't know, I have a hard time kind of coming to terms with the ending of this episode because it makes you question yourself, and it makes you question what you would do if you were in Terry O'Quinn's situation, which I think is a really successful piece of this episode because Terry O'Quinn ends up not going away with the alien. And even though he's a scientist, he obviously strives for knowledge, he can't bring himself to leave everything and kind of go on the ultimate kind of knowledge journey. And I don't know, I find that so interesting, and that's kind of the angle that they ended up going with at the end of the episode, and I think it's really kind of compelling and interesting and thought-provoking.
As most of these episodes were.
Yeah. I was really reminded of, Roy Neary, the Richard Dreyfuss character from Close Encounters.
Yeah, very, very similar vein this ends up being. And also similar in that Close Encounters, for most of its runtime, feels kind of like a horror movie where you don't know the intentions of these invaders. And more sort of terrifying in this when we're still unaware of what it's actually after, that it can not only mimic these people, but morph into anyone they know or anything that they know. Certainly, the nuclear bomb countdown is quite a wonderful turn at the end of the episode.
Yeah, I really like that. And I love when they're in the control room and they're just like, we got it, we tripped it up. And it's like, ooh, you shouldn't provoke it.
Yeah.
Because it'll turn into a complex mechanical device and blow you all up.
Exactly.
Overall thoughts on episode 2 of season 1. I thought all 3 parts really knocked it out of the park. Maybe some minor, like you said, Father Malone, some minor quibbles. But other than that, I think this is a really good follow-up to the first episode of the show.
Yeah, I'm kind of afraid that, we definitely, Tommy Lee Wallace, pulled his weight on this thing, but we're going to be getting away from Wes Craven for a while. So I'm like, I hope we're okay with that. But I mean, we've got a raft of great directors coming up, so I imagine that will be okay.
I think this is an incredible episode. This is a fantastic hour of television. I think in many ways I felt this way about Saturday, but I definitely feel about this particular episode, beginning to end, as good, if not better, than the original run of the Twilight Zone television series. There are a lot of great episodes that they created back there in the 60s, but this one felt more thought-provoking and certainly scarier than anything they ever produced. These are, I think these episodes are as relevant today as they were 33 years ago. I think they will continue to be so, and just an amazing hour of television. I really can't praise it any more than that.
All right, so that'll do it for Season 1, Episode 2 of Twilight Zone 1985. Next episode, we're going to be talking about Episode 3 of Season 1. That episode also has 3 segments: Healer, Children's Zoo, and Kentucky Ride. No more Wes Craven direction for a while. Unfortunately, maybe fortunately, maybe some other people will step up and really knock it out of the park. We'll see. Well,
we will have Wes Craven in an episode.
That's right. Until then, however, where can people find you, Father Malone?
You can find me at my YouTube channel, Odd 5 Films. I do a show called You've Never Seen, taking a look at older films that have kind of been forgotten or were never really given their due to begin with. You can also catch me on another podcast entitled Chronicles from the Crypt, where Chris and I re-examined the HBO television series based on the 1950s horror comics Tales from the Crypt.
What about you, Mike White?
You can find me doing a podcast with Chris. We both have our secret special podcast with Chris, and ours is called The Kolchak Tapes, and you can find that over at kolchaktapes.com. And I also do a little podcast called The Projection Booth, which is out weekly, and you get that at projectionboothpodcast.com.
And I do a weekly podcast called The Culture Cast, along with the 2 podcasts they mentioned, along with this one. If you want to check that one out, head on over to culturecast.com. And big thanks, because I didn't get a chance to thank them in the first episode, big thanks to Roxy Drive and Neutron Dreams for the intro, outro for this podcast. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies. Inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.